Hello. Welcome back to No Me Callo. I won't stay quiet. I'm your host, Jessica Lomelin. And before starting this episode, honestly, I even debated whether I still wanted to do this series. And not because I don't have things to say. I think it's the opposite. I have too many. Too many things living inside my head at the same time. Too many internal conversations. Too many emotions that normally never come out loud because I learned to process them on my own. And I feel like a lot of people live like this. Like emotionally being locked inside a room full of noise, while on the outside, life still looks completely normal. We go to work, we reply to messages, we post stories, we laugh, we make jokes, we go out with people, but inside our minds, there's a completely different reality happening. And that's what I want this series to be. I don't want perfect episodes. I want real episodes. I want to talk about the things that usually stay trapped in our minds, the conversation we never had, the thoughts we are embarrassed to say out loud, the silences we use to emotionally survive. So the first episode of this June series is called This Audio Was Not Meant to Be Heard. Because honestly, I think we all have internal recordings that were never really meant to exist. And this is one of mine. So you know what to do. Get comfortable, grab your coffee, your cafecito, your glass of wine, or a cold beer, and get ready to chismear with me. I think one of the strangest things about growing up is realizing how many versions of yourself can exist at the same time. Because there's a version of me that everyone knows, the one that functions, the one that shows up, the one that replies to messages, the one that works, the one that makes people laugh, the one that seems strong, the one that seems independent, the one that looks like she has everything under control, the one that says, yeah, I'm fine, even when I'm not fine. And I think the most dangerous part of learning how to emotionally survive is that you get really good at hiding it, really good at acting normal, really good at continuing your day even when something inside you feels broken, exhausted, or confused. Because no one really teaches you how to express what you feel. You just learn how to keep functioning. And eventually, you get used to it, that you start feeling guilty for even admitting something is affecting you. So you stay quiet, you distract yourself, you stay busy, you become the strong one. And after a while, you don't even know how to stop doing it anymore. And there's the other version of me, the one nobody hears, the one who overthinks everything, the one who stays up replaying conversations from 3 days ago, wondering why certain things affected her so much, the one who overanalyzes silences, shifts in energy, tones of voice, the one who feels everything deeply, but learned to hide it well because at some point she realized that feeling too much makes people uncomfortable. And honestly, I'm tired of pretending that version doesn't exist. Because it does. It exists every time I'm alone with myself. It exists at night when there are no distractions. It exists when something affects me and I say, it's fine, even when it isn't. It exists when I wonder if people actually know who I am, or if they know the version of me that learned how to survive. And I think a lot of people live exactly like this, with two versions of themselves, the functional one and the real one, the one everyone sees and the one that carries everything in silence. Because there comes a point where you don't even know how to explain what you feel anymore. You just know something inside you is tired. And it's not physical exhaustion, it's mental, it's emotional. It's that kind of exhaustion that comes from always feeling like you have to be okay so you don't worry other people. That exhaustion of overthinking, of feeling too much, of holding too much in. Because honestly, there are days where I feel emotionally drained before the day even starts. And I still get up, and I still smile, and I still do what I need to do. And I think when people hear that, they think, wow, she's so strong. But the truth is, most of the time it's not strength, it's a habit. The habit of not stopping, the habit of not talking about what you feel, the habit of acting like everything is under control because you don't know what would happen if you ever admitted that it isn't. Sometimes I wonder when we started editing our emotions to make them easier for other people to digest. When we started softening what we feel so we don't come across as too much. Because I feel like a lot of people don't really show who they are. They show the version they think will be accepted, the least complicated one, the least intense one, the least emotional one. And honestly, that's really sad. It's sad having to shrink yourself emotionally just so other people feel comfortable. It's sad feeling like you have to hide parts of yourself so you don't make things uncomfortable. And I think I did that for a very long time. Learning to look calm even when my mind was full of noise. Learning to say, oh, it's nothing, even when it was something. Learning to swallow things to avoid conflict. learning to look strong because I felt like I didn't have another option. But recently, I've realized something. The problem with emotionally surviving for too long is that one day you don't even know how to stop anymore. You don't know how to speak without filtering, how to feel without minimizing yourself, how to ask for help without feeling guilty, how to admit something hurt you without immediately saying, "But I'm fine." And I think this series is born exactly from that place, from being tired of editing my mind so much before I speak, from being tired of having real conversations only inside my head. Because honestly, there are thoughts I never said out loud, emotions I hid even when they were consuming me, parts of me that people never heard because I got too good at looking emotionally fine. And maybe this podcast is the first time I finally stopped hiding that version of me completely. And there are conversations that technically never happened, but in my head, they did. And they last for hours, sometimes days. Sometimes a 5-minute conversation stays with me the entire week. And I don't think people really understand how exhausting it is to live like that. Because from the outside, I probably look completely normal. The conversation ends, I laugh, I say, okay, I move on with my day. But inside my head, something keeps running. And it says, why did they say it like that? Did I come off as too much? Maybe I talk too much. Maybe I should have stayed quiet. What if they think differently of me now? What if I ruined something without realizing it? And the more I try to let it go, the louder it gets. And honestly, I'm tired of my mind turning small things into emotional storms. Because sometimes it's not even big problems. Sometimes it's a slight change in someone's tone, a drier than usual text, a weird silence, a different energy. And suddenly my brain starts building stories that probably aren't even real, but emotionally feel completely real. And it's exhausting trying to explain it to someone who doesn't overthink. People just say, just stop thinking so much. As if it was that easy. As if my mind had an off switch. As if I would choose to live like this. There are nights where I'm literally laying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations the other person has probably already forgotten. And I'm still there, analyzing every word, every pause, every expression. Wondering if I said something wrong, wondering if I was too much, wondering if I was misunderstood. And honestly, I think part of me is always trying to avoid rejection. Because when someone feels deeply, you start noticing everything. Everything. You notice when someone changes with you, even slightly. You notice when the energy shifts. You notice when replies take longer. You notice when something feels off. And even when you try to convince yourself it doesn't matter, your mind doesn't stop. Sometimes I wish I knew what it feels like not to think so much, to finish a conversation and just move on. No mental replay, no anxiety, no scenarios, no 20 different versions of what something might have meant. Because honestly, there are days when my own mind exhausts me more than anything else. And the worst part is, I don't always say it. I just smile, I just keep functioning, and I just act like I'm fine. While inside, I'm having a full conversation with myself. And I think that's the loneliest part of overthinking, that most of the battles happen in silence. No one hears the mental noise. No one hears the arguments you have with yourself. No one hears how many times you have to try to convince yourself that you're overreacting. Because I do that too. I tell myself, Jessica, just let it go. It's not that serious. They probably didn't even notice. You're thinking too much. But even when I know that, my mind keeps going. And I think people assume overthinking is just thinking a lot, but it's not. Overthinking is feeling like your mind never rests. It's emotionally reliving things over and over again, even after they're over. It's being physically somewhere, but mentally stuck in a conversation that already ended hours ago. It's wanting to turn your brain off just for 5 minutes so you can feel peace. Because honestly, there are nights when all I want is mental silence. No messages, no noise, no music, no social media, nothing. Just silence inside my head. Because I'm tired of hearing myself think so much. And I think part of what hurts the most is that people would never imagine how much lives inside my mind because I got too good at looking calm. I got too good at functioning, at continuing, at looking strong. But no one sees the times I reread messages before sending them. No one sees the times I delete something because I think, maybe that sounded too intense. No one sees the times I rehearse conversations in my head before having them. And no one sees the times I hold myself back from expressing something just to avoid feeling vulnerable later. And honestly, it's exhausting to live like you have to constantly control how you're perceived. Sometimes I wonder how long I've been living more inside my head than in the present. Because there are beautiful moments, and still my mind is busy worrying, analyzing, anticipating, protecting itself. And I think a part of me got so used to being emotionally alert that I don't even know how to fully relax anymore. Like my mind is always waiting for something to go wrong. And yeah, I know that probably most things were never as deep as I felt them. But for me, they were. And that's exhausting too. Feeling everything so deeply. Because even when I try to look calm, the truth is there are days when my mind is the loudest place I've ever been. And there is a kind of exhaustion that no one notices because you're still functioning. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because the more functional you are, the less people ever stop to ask you if you're actually okay. And I think I became really good at that, at looking calm, at continuing to work even when I feel mentally drained, at answering, yes, I'm fine, so automatically that sometimes I started believing it myself. But the truth is, there are days when I feel like I'm carrying way too much emotionally, and no one notices because I'm still functioning normally. I still show up, I still reply to messages, I still make people laugh, I still work, I still be the strong one. And it's so strange how someone can look completely normal on the outside while internally feeling like they're collapsing. Because people think when someone is struggling, it always shows, but it doesn't. Sometimes the most emotionally exhausted people are the ones who learn how to hide it best, the ones who learn how to survive without bothering anyone. And honestly, I think I've been emotionally surviving in silence for a very long time. A long time feeling things I never fully said out loud. A long time minimizing what I feel so I don't come across as too emotional. Because I grew up thinking being strong meant holding it in, not crying too much, not reacting too much, not needing too much, not feeling too much. So you start swallowing things. Comments that did hurt you, but you said it's fine. Moments you wanted to speak, but you stayed quiet to avoid being vulnerable. Times where you were emotionally exhausted, but kept going because you felt like you didn't have another choice. And after years of doing that, you don't even know how to express yourself naturally anymore. Because you filter everything, you edit everything, you soften everything, even your own emotions. And I think that's why my mind never rests. Because everything I don't say out loud stays alive inside me. And that's where the conversation no one hears begin. The arguments with myself, the mental replay, the nights where I'm laying in bed replaying things the other person probably already forgot, but my mind is still holding on to. Why did that affect me so much? Should I have said something? Am I overreacting? Why do I feel everything so deeply? Why is it so hard for me to let certain things go? And honestly, I'm tired of hearing myself think so much. Tired of feeling like my head never fully turns off. Because people don't understand how exhausting it is to live like this. How exhausting it is to analyze everything. From the tone, the silence, the small shifts in energy, short messages, distance, everything. And the more anxiety you have, the more stories your mind creates. And the worst part is, even when you know you're probably overthinking it, it still feels real emotionally. There are nights when all I want is mental silence because I'm tired of living in such a constant state of emotional alertness. Like a part of me is always waiting for something to go wrong. And I think that happens when you've spent so long surviving instead of actually living. When you've spent too long being the strong one, the stable one, the calm one, the one who can handle it. Because eventually you become someone who doesn't even know how to fully let their guard down anymore. And that's sad. It's sad feeling like you have to hide parts of yourself just to not make others uncomfortable. It's sad feeling like you have to shrink your emotions just to be easier to digest. Because honestly, I do feel a lot. A lot. I just learned how to hide it well. I learned how to look calm even when my mind is full of noise. I learned how to smile even when I'm emotionally exhausted. I learned how to say it's nothing even when it's something. I learned how to minimize things that hurt me because I thought I was being too much. And it's exhausting to constantly question whether you're allowed to feel what you feel. Because the truth is, I don't think the problem is feeling deeply. I think the problem is that we live in a world that rewards people who know how to hide what they feel. The functional ones, the quiet ones, the ones who never make things uncomfortable. The one who always seems strong. But no one talks about the emotional cost of being that person all the time. No one talks about how exhausting it is to hold yourself together internally while appearing stable on the outside. No one talks about how lonely it can feel to be someone who looks like they have everything under control. And honestly, I think I got tired of acting like I'm always okay just because I learned how to function while feeling broken inside. So I want to ask you something. Who are you when no one is watching? Not when you're working, not when you're around people, not when you're replaying messages, not when you're trying to look emotionally calm, not when you're being the version of yourself everyone's already expecting you to be. Who are you really when you finally sit alone with yourself? Because honestly, that question scared me. And I think part of me avoided asking it for a very long time because I was too busy surviving, too busy functioning, too busy being what everyone needed from me. The strong one, the stable one, the problem solver, the one who keeps going even when she's exhausted, the one who smiles even when she's mentally at war with herself. And I think there comes a point where you do that so many times that you start disconnecting from yourself. You don't really know what you feel anymore. You just know how to keep going. Because if I'm completely honest, there are moments where I feel very alone inside my own head. Even when I'm surrounded by people, even when I'm talking, even when I'm laughing. Because there's a version of me that almost no one really knows. The version that shows up when the noise finally stops. When I get home, when I take off the functional personality, when I don't have the energy to look strong anymore. And that version of me overthinks everything, feels everything, cries about things I probably never admit out loud, questions everything, wonders if I'm doing things right, wonders if people actually know me or only know the version of me that learned how to survive. And I think for a long time, I also chose not to listen to myself too much because listening meant accepting things that scared me, accepting there are parts of me that are emotionally exhausted, accepting that I often say I'm fine because I don't know how to fully explain what I feel, accepting that sometimes I look calm on the outside, while inside I feel like I'm holding too much. Accepting that I spend too much time inside my head, too much time overthinking, too much time trying to control how I'm perceived. And honestly, it's exhausting to live feeling like you always have to edit yourself emotionally. Because even when I'm alone, I still feel like I'm performing a little. And that's a very hard thing to admit. Realizing I got so used to looking strong that even in private, I struggled to fully fall apart. As if a part of me is always in survival mode, always alert, always trying to stay okay. And I think that happens when you've been the person holding everything together for too long. You become an expert at hiding yourself, even from yourself. There are nights where I sit in silence with myself. And honestly, I don't even know how to explain what I feel. I just know there's too much noise inside me. Too many built up emotions, too many thoughts that never fully came out, too many versions of me fighting at the same time. The version of me wants to rest. The version that wants to disappear for a while. The version that wants to feel understood. The strong version. The tired version. The version that doesn't want to keep pretending things affect her less than they actually do. And I think that's why I wanted to create the series. Because I'm tired of ignoring my own inner voice. Tired of acting like it doesn't exist just because it doesn't always sound pretty. Because the truth is, my mind is not always inspirational. Sometimes it sounds sad. Sometimes it's confused. Sometimes it's exhausted. Sometimes it's broken. And honestly, I think healing starts there too. Not just in the beautiful parts of us, but also in the uncomfortable ones, in the parts we hide, in the parts we edit before showing them, in the parts we think no one would understand. And maybe for the first time in a very long time, I want to actually start listening to myself. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it makes me cry, even if there are parts inside me I still don't fully understand. Because I think I spent too long trying to look emotionally okay instead of asking myself if I actually was. And there's a huge difference between those two things. So yeah, maybe I still don't fully know that more honest version of me yet, but I want to stop ignoring her because I feel like she's been trying to be heard for a very long time. And as always, I want to recommend you a book, and it's called The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. And I'm not bringing this as a typical self-help growth book. Instead, I'm bringing it because it explains something many of us feel but don't always know how to put it into words. That emotional exhaustion of constantly functioning, of looking fine on the outside while internally caring too much, of getting so used to surviving that you don't even realize how tired you actually are. This book speaks deeply about that, about how many times we're not necessarily broken, we're just in survival mode. And when you stay there long enough, you start normalizing things like overthinking everything, trying to control everything, holding back what you feel, and emotionally editing yourself so you don't make others uncomfortable. And I think that's exactly what happens when you start feeling like you always have to look strong, when you learn how to function, even when you're not okay inside. And this book really made me think about something I said in this episode, that sometimes what we're missing is not strength, it's space to actually hear ourselves. And maybe that's the most important part, learning to stop ignoring what we feel just because it doesn't look perfect from the outside. So if at any point you feel like you live too much inside your head, or you're carrying things in silence while you're still showing up and functioning, I think this book might really resonate with you, so I recommend it to you. And maybe this episode was too honest. I don't know, maybe I said things I would normally edit, soften, or just keep living inside my head like I always have. And maybe a part of me still wonders if it was necessary to say this directly. But the other part, the part that's tired of pretending, no, it was. Because honestly, I think I'm tired of living only inside my head, of having entire conversations with myself that never leave my mouth, of feeling things deeply and then acting like they don't affect me that much, of smiling in spaces where internally I feel completely emotionally overwhelmed, of functioning while internally feeling exhausted. And if I'm being completely honest, it's not that I don't have a voice. It's that for a very long time, I learned to use it carefully, to measure it, to filter it, to not be too much, to not make things uncomfortable, to not explain too much, to not feel too loudly. And over time, that disconnects you from yourself. You get used to holding things in, to minimize what you feel, to saying it's fine when it isn't, to pushing forward even when something inside you is asking you to pause. And eventually, you don't know anymore if you're actually okay or if you're just gotten really good at surviving. And we also have thoughts you never say out loud, emotions you hide, conversations that only exist in your mind, or a version of yourself that almost no one really knows because you've learned to only show what's easy to receive. I want you to know something. You're not alone. Even if your experience feels extremely internal, extremely silent, or extremely hard to explain, there are so many people feeling that same noise inside their own minds, functioning on the outside, overthinking on the inside, feeling more than they show, carrying things no one sees. And maybe that's why it hurts so much, because it's not pain that gets shouted, it's a pain that gets thought. But I think this is the moment where something inside me shifts, where I don't want to keep editing myself just to fit into a more comfortable version of me anymore, where I don't want to keep ignoring what I feel just because it's hard to explain, where I start understanding that feeling deeply isn't the problem. The problem is learning how to hide it for so long. And maybe you're there too, in that in-between space between just surviving and actually starting to listen to yourself. So if anything in this episode made you feel seen, even just a little, hold on to that. Hold on to the idea that you're not too much for feeling deeply. You're not wrong for overthinking. You're not alone for living more inside your head than you show outside. You're just trying to understand yourself in a world where no one really taught you how. And maybe it's time to stop acting like we're not feeling all of this, because what we silence doesn't disappear. It just stays living inside of us. And me, for today at least, I don't want to keep ignoring it anymore. In the description of this episode, you'll find the Amazon link to the full book list featured in No Me Callo, I Won't Stay Quiet from the very first episode to today. And don't forget that every Friday there's a new episode waiting for you. The second episode of this series is called What I Say When It's Already Over. Because there's something that happens to me, and I don't know if it happens to anyone else. But there are, and still are, many times where I don't actually finish a conversation when the conversation ends. And the moment I say what I can, I respond how I can, I adapt, I keep up, and it seems normal. But afterwards, when I'm alone, everything I didn't say starts. I start replaying the conversation in my head, but this time differently. This time I say the right thing. This time I don't stay quiet. This time I find the exact words. This time I express what I really meant. And it used to frustrate me because that version of me always shows up late. The brave version of me doesn't show up in the moment. She shows up after, when it's already over, when it doesn't matter anymore, when no one is listening. And I'm left wondering, how many parts of me only exist in what I think afterwards, and never in what I actually say in the moment? And that is this episode. Everything I say when it's already over, but could never say when it mattered. So don't miss it. You were listening to No Me Callo, I Won't Stay Quiet. I'm your host, Jessica Lomelin. Until next time.